This is the Week 3 lecture, Part 1, and I will be touching once again a little bit on mitigation, and I'll be covering aspects of the Emergency Operations Center, or the EOC. I wanted to revisit mitigation because it may be the most pertinent aspect of the emergency manager's job over any of the other phases of emergency management. As noted in the previous lecture, being an emergency manager is not about jumping into a phone booth and emerging with a brightly colored leotard donning a large letter E on your chest when the big one hits. It's about daily decisions that will mitigate negative consequences. Those daily decisions take place prior to, during, and after an incident. Here is a graphic that illustrates this principle. Where response, recovery, and even preparedness is disaster dependent, mitigation is a practice that continues without regard to a specific crisis. It is the job of an effective emergency manager to be thinking mitigation at all times. They are examining their surroundings both figuratively and literally. What are the natural limitations of my geographic area? Are we likely to endure tornadoes, blackouts, or excessive heat? Who is responsible for building a new shelter? Is there a grant that can help us pay for that? Are citizens aware of the resources already available? Well, for that matter, do our first responders know what resources are available? This is the mind of the effective emergency manager. They look ahead while many, or even all, others are focused on the whirlwind of today's issues. Ideally, when the crisis occurs and people say, "Wow, who could have seen this coming?" the answer will be, well, in our city, our emergency manager did. She has been preparing us for this for a long time. Not only did she make sure that the appropriate resources were in place and that our people were trained, she helped us to mentally prepare for the unexpected. Now, would that characterize you? All right, I want to speak for a couple of minutes about the EOC. It's important to have a grasp on what an EOC is and what it is not. Sadly, there are a number of misconceptions about the EOC and public safety that, in my opinion, have led to its underutilization. First, know that there is a wide range of EOC designs and capabilities. There are effective ways to design them, more effective than others, but there is no perfect or ideal design that suits every jurisdiction. At one end of the spectrum is little more than a conference room with a projector and a lectern. At the other end of that same spectrum, it may look like it could rival the resources of NORAD. However, the average EOC will have the various sections divided out, frequently with a sign hanging over the top of the respective work area, and a prominent method of identifying who is assigned to which task, as is demonstrated right here with the vests. Naturally, it will be outfitted with a number of technologically appropriate tools. Unfortunately, some agencies put the technological cart before the horse, and they may grab grant dollars to make large purchases without having a firm grasp on the place of an EOC in an emergency. This is where the education that you are getting now will put you ahead of the game in many respects. Let me start with a frequent misconception. The EOC is not incident command. While it may be the locus of many high-level decision makers like the mayor or the fire chief or the police chief or the public works director, etc., it's not incident command. An incident commander oversees all of the operations of an incident and are usually located somewhere in the field near the problem. The problem may require on-scene leadership from multiple disciplines. For instance, the fire and police departments may need to work very closely together to overcome an emergency. And the cooperation involved in this is called unified command. In fact, it's not uncommon for this to take place in a mobile command post or even in the cab of a pickup truck. In any case, the EOC is not where unified command takes place. Now, it's really big if there are multiple events in different areas that require multiple incident commanders. They are controlled by area command. When there are multiple incident commands involved, incident commanders, they will inevitably be competing for the same resources. So an area command is established. But generally, an EOC is not where area command takes place. The EOC is where coordination takes place. The operating of an EOC is the practice of providing support and coordination to incident command, unified command, or area command. It is important to have decision makers participate in the EOC because the request for resources must be approved by higher level officials. It also forces those officials and the policymakers of the organization to think through the impacts of the emergency. While they are not responsible for the tactical response to the event, they are responsible for the long-term strategic planning and priority setting. Think of it this way. Your city has a significant natural gas leak that forces the evacuation of a large neighborhood. The incident commander knows what he needs to get the leak stopped, the people evacuated, streets blocked, prevent looters from burglarizing empty homes and businesses, manage the media, etc. However, the actual people that are deployed to complete those tasks work for Public Works, the private gas company, the police department, and so on, so we cannot effectively direct them all, and frankly it's not feasible to do so. Recall my Captain Chandler example. Not only that, the incident commander is not going to know the details of how exactly to accomplish each one of those tasks themselves. Incident commander needs to be able to contact the right person with the knowledge, the resources, and the rank to get the various tasks done. The incident commander needs the Emergency Operations Center. So you'll notice in this slide that I put describe the need and deploy solutions. So that's because the EOC is not just a logistics section that deploys resources as the ICCs fit. It is a room of thinkers and of problem solvers in their own right. The incident commander is able to describe the needs such as, I have a problem with cars entering my scene from an alley. And then the appropriate person within the EOC, in this case, maybe a combination of police and public works decision makers, can then determine what is needed to solve the problem and deploy the appropriate resources. In this tangible way, the EOC has coordinated and supported the incident commander without undermining that person's authority over the event and without being a distraction to him in the field. As to the decision to activate an EOC, think about the following three scenarios. First, we have here a large structure fire in a residential neighborhood. It would certainly require an incident commander. There is a problem to solve and a lot of resources to coordinate, but this can be done by the incident commander. The resources largely will come from the same discipline, in this case, from just within the fire department, and it is not exceedingly complex for the fire department to solve. It's right there in their wheelhouse. Second scenario might be instead a fire that occurred at a commercial plant that had a number of dangerous chemicals that were being dispersed into the environment and into a nearby lake. This event may require some form of unified command, depending on how it all plays out. How bad is the fire itself? What kinds of chemicals are we talking about? How significant is the exposure? You get the idea. And then scenario number 3 is maybe this is a wildland fire that reaches a city. There are multiple fires on national and state land, and there are structures on fire in the city. Area command may even be effective to manage this, the various incident commands. Knowing what you know now, at what point does the EOC fit into the equation? Ideally, you recognized that the EOC could be used in each circumstance. It is less likely, but feasible, to activate the EOC for this first event. The complexity of the emergency is the biggest factor in that decision. Most municipal fire departments can probably handle that largely on their own, making the EOC, an unneeded resource. In the second event, I would suggest it would be unwise to attack the problem without activating the EOC. While the tactical decisions are still left to the on-scene incident commander, there may be strategic decisions that affect the neighborhood or that have a significant political impact. The way in which a crisis is initially handled can have a lasting impact on what happens long after the incident commander packs up for the day. Recognizing the complexities and identifying the impacts is part of what the emergency manager does. It is those considerations that may prompt the emergency manager to activate the EOC. It may be wise to get all of the interested parties together in a room to provide solutions. In this specific scenario, there are likely going to be a number of experts that need to weigh in on the issue, which adds to the complexity of the decision making. Now, in the third event, it would be outright foolish not to activate the EOC. There are way too many moving parts to keep from putting that tool to work. In fact, at this level, there may be multiple EOCs and incident management teams and all kinds of moving parts. Most importantly, have a sense of the role of the EOC and how to leverage it effectively. If there is a clear understanding of the role of the EOC and everyone stays in their lane, it is a powerful tool that leads to exponentially greater success. A takeaway from this portion of the lecture is this: that incident commanders can become unnecessarily concerned that they will lose control or command of an incident if the EOC is activated. The misconception that the EOC will take over has caused incident commanders to hesitate when considering the usefulness of an EOC, when, in fact, it is a tool that will help them in the short term through resource allocation and in the long term through the coordination of strategic decisions. It shouldn't be this way, but activating the EOC early often takes courage when going head-to-head with an incident commander that is dealing with an active event. As an emergency manager, have these discussions with your public safety leaders ahead of time so you don't end up on the wrong side of a match like this one.